Hey Kayla, I wanted to leave you some feedback on your week 3 writing assignment. I think you have a potential for a good claim in this submission that you could use for a thesis statement, but this submission needs another round of revision, focusing both on higher order concerns and lower order concerns. Um, So, in terms of higher order concerns, this opening paragraph is supposed to be a summary plus a thesis statement. And I would argue that this really doesn't read like a summary, nor is there a clear thesis statement presented. Secondly, the assignment asked you to identify 3 key ideas that you could use to support your thesis. And it feels like what you're mainly doing here is reader response. And you have some sentence fragments here that aren't key ideas, right? Because you have to have complete sentences to have key ideas. So let's talk about this submission line by line. So good job on your signal phrase. You have a clear signal phrase here. But this opening line needs some tweaking. So if you remember from the lectures, a thesis should, excuse me, not a thesis, I apologize. A summary should focus on the overarching main idea of the entire essay, and then gradually you build in the details that the reader needs to get there, right? So in terms of the sentence level, what's going on? A prison cannot do capital punishment, so you need to rephrase here. You're also having errors with parallelism. So whenever you're joining 2 clauses, with the word and, you want those clauses to mirror each other. So if you read this out loud, a hanging is about a prison in Burma that does capital punishment and how the prisoners are treated. Hopefully you can hear that the second part of this sounds kind of awkward, and it's because you have a verb here, and really what your sentence is trying to do is have a verb and have the word and join another clause which should also begin with a verb. It doesn't begin with a verb here. How is usually considered an adverb, and that's why this sentence reads awkward. So you've got some revision to do here. You've got a run-on sentence here, so make sure that you correct that. So you have these details here that are important to the story, but there's no clear sense of organization or how these ideas relate to one another. It's just like you're listing details, right? And that's why it doesn't read like a clear, cohesive summary. You also need to edit for spelling. I do think that this has the potential for a good claim. I think that you're right. Orwell absolutely doesn't agree with capital punishment, or that's what he seems to suggest. Although you need to do some editing here because there's no need for you to have the possession. And I do think that Orwell tries to make the reader feel bad for the prisoners. I think that if you could combine these ideas. Oh, I'm looking at your next sentence now and rethinking this. So you say Orwell uses good details for you to feel like you're there and make you feel bad for the prisoner. So this needs some editing. Good details is too vague. You don't want to use second person in professional writing. You want to indicate who you really mean here, which I think you mean the reader. But I think there's potential for a thesis statement here. So if you could indicate why the details are good and why Orwell would want to make the reader feel empathy for the prisoner, I think you could combine all these ideas together to make for a good thesis. In summaries, you typically want to avoid using evidence. That's why we call them summaries. You should be stating these ideas in your own words. And it really just doesn't... I understand that you're trying to use this evidence to support this idea, but you're getting ahead of yourself, right? What you need to do is start with Orwell's main idea and get the reader to your thesis and end with your thesis. And this sentence needs some editing for clarity. As I said before, what you're doing here, is sounds more like reader response. So you're talking about the essay as opposed to drafting key ideas in support of the thesis statement. So this section needs to be revised as well. So really what I'm asking you to do is, once you identify your argument, once you write your thesis, you then need to plan out the key ideas you will use to support that thesis. And I don't quite see that yet, because these are sentence fragments, they're not complete thoughts, and this just has you talking about the essay. I'll try to answer this for you, though. Why did they laugh and drink next to the prisoner? Most readers and scholars interpret that to mean that they are trying to cope with what they just did, meaning that they feel real guilt for having killed the prisoner, but they feel forced to do it because duty in their job has them do it. And so they don't feel like they have a choice, but, you know, they're still human beings with consciousness, with conscious, consciences. I cannot talk today. And therefore, they experience guilt just how any of us would do. So I do think that there's a salvageable claim in here. This submission does need quite a bit of revision. There's quite a few spelling and grammatical errors in it. So I've mentioned this to you before, and I will say it again. I really do think working with the writing tutors will help you. I encourage you to start making appointments with them and working with them on your writing. And I encourage you to start doing that now before we enter into our final project, which will be an 8 to 10 page research paper. I think that their guidance and support will help out quite a bit. They also offer online tutoring if you feel uncomfortable going to face-to-face tutoring. And you can also visit me during my office hours, and I am happy to Zoom if you feel uncomfortable about doing face-to-face office meetings. All right, thank you.